are joining us anew. This is part 3 of our 3-part series today, an overview of dimensions, and the first of 2 big training sessions that we will have for dimensions. This, as you know, is sort of brought to you at UCI by the UCI Brain initiative. We're trying to make this resource available to our neuroscientists around campus, and most recently we've extended also to those who are doing COVID-19 research given the pandemic. The earlier parts were really a nice overview that was delivered by Heidi Becker, who is hosting the meeting, of the Dimensions resource, of the different databases that are included, how to access it, and how to produce some beautiful analytical data, and how to export that and have things like email alerts and so on. I think that we're now getting into the part of the day where we're really just kind of opening it up more to questions, but I'll leave it to Heidi to moderate and lead that. And we've got some questions, but we want to make sure we open it up to others before we start. So with that, Heidi, all yours.
Okay, great. Yeah, questions. So this is designed, I don't know, can everyone give me an indication of whether you attended either of the previous 2 sessions?
You can use your reactions for that, by the way, if you like.
Oh yeah, they're all cool features now, right?
I don't know if you can actually see that, Heidi, but or maybe hand raising is better.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean, just looking at this list, most of these names are.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't want to be redundant, and then you also hear me say my catchphrases too much, and that's not a good thing. Okay, the second one, you got the basic introduction. So basically, what we're going to do is skip the slide deck, and we're going to just dive right into the platform. And the idea is, if you have something you're working on right now that you think Dimensions could help you with, but you're not exactly sure how you would go about it, that would be a great thing. We can just walk through it together in the platform and learn as we go. So that's kind of the idea here. If no one has any immediate questions that come to mind, I can show you some things that other organizations, other clients of ours are doing with Dimensions, and we can start it off that way if there are no questions. Okay. We have no questions. Okay, so
I'm sorry
yes.
to interrupt, but I do have a project that I would like to discuss, and maybe we can walk through it.
Great.
Yeah, so I work in the research development office at BioSci, School of Biological Sciences, and so one project that I'm working on is a training grant. So we would have a group of researchers, and we would have to get analytics on their publications, their past funding. So it would be creating a group, and then kind of looking at maybe their H-index. I know that might not be able to do in Dimensions, but we would be looking at some of those analytics.
Yeah.
So is the FCR and the RCR the only type of academic impact we could get from Dimensions?
Yeah, on a publication basis, well, yeah, in addition to straight citations, yes. H-index is something that, our company has a philosophy, around metrics. We're a signatory to DORA. We don't want metrics to be proprietary, and we're all, there are problems with H-index, to be frank. It's on our roadmap to develop a similar metric, but we haven't, again, we really want to put a lot of thought into what that metric is meant to mean. And with the FCR and the RCR, I think, again, the idea is that that gives you some context. So it's not, you're not just looking at straight citations. So if you think about it, an FCR mean, if you look at the FCR and the RCR for a given researcher's set of publications, the mean will give you not an H index, but some, sense of, I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
For productivity, I think, in general. I mean, maybe I can help also comment on this, Justin. This is Mike. I having put together and served on study section for training grants, I could say that in study sections, H index never ever really comes up. I mean, I think the thing that really comes up the most is publication record, certainly granting, so having a good grant history and current funding, making sure that there's ample current funding to support students. But the thing where I thought Dimensions would really shine on is showing the existing collaborative networks among individuals. One of the things that was really, I think, a major reason for the success that we had with RT32 was we were able to show that the subset of people that we selected to be part of that weren't just very well funded and very well established in terms of their publication records and so on, because we did have also some junior folks that are just early in their career, but they're still doing very well for themselves. We showed that they're interacting. We showed that they have joint papers, joint grants, joint anything. So being able to kind of go down that rabbit hole a little bit on Dimensions and find how people are interacting with each other in the context of grants and papers, I think is very helpful. And I wonder if Heidi knows of some reasonably streamlined ways to be able to do that better, to kind of look at networks.
Actually, I'm so glad you brought that up. Okay, I feel like you could right now. It's about to give someone a present. So I'm just basically trying to get this down to, okay, let's do this by researcher. And I'm just picking somebody at random. So there is a export for bibliometric mapping option in Dimensions. And what this does is it interacts with two free software systems for network analysis, VOSviewer and SiteSpace. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with either of those tools. They're free to download, and I'll show you what it looks like. It's pretty awesome. We're planning a long-term roadmap to include these network visualizations in Dimensions at some point. I don't know what the exact timeline is, but in the meantime, so you have this export for bibliometric mapping, and what that will show up as, you'll see it in, when you export, this is the export center. First of all, this will show you what you've exported. I've mistakenly exported publications when I wanted to do grants. So this will remind you of what you did and how many records. This particular download, this particular CSV is specifically designed to interact with VOSviewer, and I'll show you VOSviewer, and it will be a very nostalgic interface for a lot of you. As soon as it loads, here we go. So again, this is free software you can download at VOSviewer.com. I'm just gonna show you what you can do. I'm not an expert on this, but I can still do it. So that means it's not that difficult. If we go to next, so now we'll see Dimensions mentioned here. You'll click on the Dimensions tab, and then make sure that you, because this is such an old, like a ridiculous way to get to things, make sure that you put it in a place where you can easily access it. So desktop, for example. I'm going to show you. So this is one I recently did for a consortium of universities in Atlanta. So you can do a number. I mean, there's so much you can do. So you could do a co-authorship analysis. You could do this by, you can change the units. You can pick, I don't even know what fractional, full counting, how that would affect it, but you can change that. There's a manual you can access and get into very much extreme detail about this. You can set thresholds. So if you don't want papers that have like thousands of co-authors, you can do that. So if we do a co-authorship one, I'm actually going to do organizations because I know this result set. So if I want to see of this exports that I did, publications, what this network looks like, again, you can set threshold. So maybe I want to set this at, it has to be cited at least once. And the minimum documents, I'm going to put at 10, well, 7, whatever. It's going to tell you how many organizations are involved. So this is a consortia of 4 different universities. And this is everyone they've collaborated with of the whatever, I think I probably picked a couple of years worth of publications. You can unselect universities or organizations from this, but once it runs, you get this really awesome visualization of the connections between the collaborations between, in this case, organizations. You could obviously do this for a person. So if I didn't want to take the time to do it because it takes a minute to download the files. But if you downloaded a person, their publications in that format, that bibliometric format, you could create a co-author network visualization for that person. And then if you look at the very bottom of my screen, I hope you can see this, this is dynamic. So you can look at these links, and at the very bottom, it will give you information about those clusters and links. You can screenshot this, so you can put this in a report. You can do all kinds of different size variations. There's different ways to look at it. It's a really cool tool, and again, it's free to download. So if you're looking to do some network analysis and have these visualizations, it's a great tool, and we have an export compatible with that. And then believe me, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I ironically work for a tech company. I don't have a tech background. So we did, yeah.
Heidi, sorry to interrupt you again. What is site space? I saw that was another option.
Yeah, site space is a little more complicated. It's like you have to download it with the C prompt. So I've never really investigated it, to be quite candid. VOSviewer for me is site space is extremely similar. It's network visualization maps. I find VOSviewer really easy to work with, so that's my default. I wish I had a better answer, but yeah, site space, I think you need to be more tech savvy than I am.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. Okay, there was a couple of questions in the chat.
Hi, this is Roxanne. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So I'm the one who asked the question about the grants and the private foundations because I work in that space.
Uh-huh.
So maybe just walk me through this a little bit. I don't want to take up everyone's time, but say we have a funding op come in and we don't know who is working in that space at a level that we would be competitive. Is this a good way to try to identify that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we look at, and unfortunately, we're looking at we're talking about a subset of Rhine, but for the purposes of this, I'm gonna talk about it. So this is another use case for dimensions. I mean, there's so many, it's really hard to cover, even in 3 hours. But if I look at analytical views, And I want to look at the research categories in which Irvine is producing the most. And again, you can look at this in terms of funding. You can look at this in terms of publication. Let's look at it in terms of funding. So you can see the research categories. Medical and health sciences is always at the top. You can see over time the funding trend for active and starting grants. You can see who, this is without even opening the panel, you can see who has been awarded the most funding and by which funders and who they're collaborating with. So if I opened Analytical Views, again, you might want to apply some kind of time frame here. So if you're looking at, you know, depending on what you're trying to find out, if you're looking at recent grants, so we'll just start year, you know, over the last 2 years, you can pick research classification when you go to research categories in this analytical view. And if we were to look at it from a you know, more specific biomedical categorization system like RCDC codes, which is where you'll find neurosciences, for example. You can see, you know, this is in descending order where your funding is you know, where you're receiving the most funding in which fields, specifically related to RCDC codes. If you wanted to be more broad, you could look at FORs. So you as you go down here, you'll see psychology, but again, mathematics, for example, studies in human society. So this is a much more broad way to look at it, but you can also look at it by, you know, really broad research areas. So public health, for example, that's one way to, you know, identify where, I hope this is answering your question. That's one way to identify where your strengths lie. And if you're looking, and you can do this for any institution, doesn't have to be your own. So that's funding. If we look at publications, you know, you can do a very similar thing by looking at, again, the research categories. I'm gonna do RCDC now. So neurosciences is at the top here, over the past, you know, and we haven't put a time frame on it, the search. So yeah, you can get a sense of where your strengths are, you know, in multiple contexts, not just funding, but publications as well. Does that answer your question?
Enough that I can play with it, and
Okay.
yeah, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Kelsey is helpfully clarifying a little bit more. If a grant came in, could you identify who is working in the space? Yes. So for that, I would use the abstract search. So if we were to, I'm just gonna, the regional ones tend to have very small result sets, so I'm gonna use this. So let's say this was the grant that came in. I would use the abstract search. And again, just click abstract search and then you have to hit enter. This is going to take 1 second for it to process again because it's extracting the terms. And then you can layer that. Thank you, Comcast. Okay. And then you can layer that with your research organ. So I can do it. Okay, so about 10 publications. And again, we just picked one at random. But now I can identify the researchers at Irvine that have published, and just click this box. So now you can identify researchers that have published very similar research to that description. Is that more helpful?
There's another question there in the chat, Heidi, at the very top
Okay.
from David.
Okay, I'm a dramatic arts teacher who's been interacting with some wonderful researchers and learning the scientific landscape in terms of funding. How might I use the tool better in the scientific world and identify opportunities for collaboration with scientists? Oh, I love dramatic. I love the intersection of art and science. That's fantastic. Actually, we have a customer that specifically bought dimensions, or had a project that they were using dimensions for, and it was basically, whoops, a project to visualize, oh, Kelsey, you weren't there. Visualize sap movement in trees using like virtual reality technology. So it was going to take place in Central Park in New York. So it was this kind of really creative public engagement with science and, you know, and artists as well. So what we did was for that, again, this is a great way to use research categories in combination with a search. So if I am looking for, David, do you have a specific topic, like intersection of topics in mind?
Well, I focus on acting, and I've been working quite a bit with creating memories for characters. So I'm interested in, you know, the retrieval of information that, you know, we might consider a false memory, or a created memory, a designed memory.
Okay, cool. Okay, so if I do this, and I did this in full data, so this gives me a pretty substantial, let's also not go back to 1865, but over the past 4 years. So if I go into, again, to analytical views and look at the research categories that we've categorized, and in this case, I would use fields of research because we're talking about, you know, a much broader topic. If you can look at papers that we've categorized in studies in human society, for example, or cognitive sciences. So let's say we want to look at false memory in the context of, let's see, literary studies. So now I have recent publications with false memory somewhere in the full data related to literary studies. You could change this to title and abstract. I think that would probably limit it too much. We're already down to 74. But now I can identify researchers and funders that are funding this type of research. I can look at research organizations, and again, I can find people. You can do this with, well, we can't do this with funding apparently. There's no funding going on in this area, but people are still producing. Let's try just putting in false memory.
And false memories may be a term that is, you know, a little too limited. But what I'm interested in is seeing are there neuroscientists working with dramatic artists at other institutions or any place else in the world?
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, let's do this. See, dramatic arts is a tricky one for dimensions because that's not the type of content we normally index. And also it's not, a lot of those outputs are not journal articles, if you know what I mean. So I would say roughly 10% of the content in dimensions is arts and humanities related. So it's not a large portion. So that might limit it. But if we did a search for,
Well, I don't know that there's a lot going on.
well, let's find out.
Okay.
Okay.
I could suggest
I sent if you try neuroaesthetics.
Oh,
right, so that would be a term, or neurocinematics is another one. So looking for terms that are really at the intersection. Neuroacting is not a term, Dave, but maybe you can coin it.
Oh, I use it all the time.
Yeah.
okay, let's try this. Ah, come on. I want to let me copy from the chat. Okay, someone's gonna have to spell it for me. I can get as far as neuro.
AESTHE. No, no, without S.
Is that right?
Yep.
I think so, because English is not my first language.
Okay, you're still doing better than I am, though. And English is my first language.
Heidi, use neuroaesthetic like that, and do an or with neurocinematics, because neurocinematics does pull back some results.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Mm-hmm. Not an A in there. Take that A out of there. Yeah, there you go. CINE. Yeah.
I'm going to leave it as is because when you search dimensions, it looks for plurals as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
This is a good result set.
Yeah, this is a good result set. And again, you can sort this a number of ways. So you can look at these publications by FCR. If you want to look at people or funders.
Well, I think in David's case, he was looking for possible collaborators, right, David? Yeah. That's what you had talked about?
Correct. Yep.
Yep. So if we look at publications, again, you just open this researcher tab. You can then drill down and look at this person's publications and see exactly what they're writing about. So that's one way. I also encourage people to explore the funding. So who's actively working on grants related to that. And I can look at people who have, again, funding secured either now or in the future. So for the next 3 years.
The thing about this too, which I like, which Heidi will show you, is that you can also see if, what kind of peer citations are these folks getting as well. So if you're looking for a collaborator, David, it's also sometimes helpful to know, are these people well known in the field as well, right? Because then it will certainly bring visibility to your project if that's something that you're looking for.
Thank you. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so if we looked at the FCR mean, this, again, this person is produced a lot, but this person actually has a higher FCR geometric mean. So again, just some context for the metrics and dimensions. So it's not an H index, but again, it gives you some kind of data to back up your decision making. Okay, there's lots coming in the chat.
Thank you. There's a lot to look at.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, you can, I've gone down many rabbit holes, just personally. You know, I see a medical story appear somewhere and I'm instantly skeptical. And I'll go into dimensions and just, and I'll look at, what the research actually says. I'm very proud that we have a free version of this, which is just the publications and data sets, but nevertheless, like anyone from around the world can go in. I had a friend of mine that was worried about the HBV vaccine. And I was able to tell her, look, you can just go in here and see what, scientists say. And, now more than ever, facts matter. So this is, I'm proud of that. Okay, I have a question. Having access to analytics will also allow those who I share a group with. Okay, Melinda. Okay.
I can actually talk. I'm Melinda.
Yeah. Okay.
So, because I had asked, I have analytics, and Justin asked the question earlier. He and I work together, but he has Plus. So I built a group, and I'm able to dynamically look at it, but I haven't been able to figure out a way to let him do that since he has a different version. And so my question was about sharing with him or someone else. And then Mike came in and said that more people might get analytic access. So then I was asking about whether or not I'd have to download the information, and then he would have a static view rather than playing dynamically with our group.
So what's coming
Okay.
on our upcoming roadmap is the ability to share groups within an instance. So if he were upgraded to analytics, you would be able to share that group with him. That's not possible right this second. It's coming though. I think, and I can get back to you. I believe it's on our 6-week roadmap. It might be on our 6-month roadmap, but not longer than that. And we just added also preset groups. So we have preset funder groups. NIH obviously is made up of a bunch of, different sections. If you want to look at NIH as a whole, you can do that using these funder groups. If you want to look at different research organization groups, like R1 universities, for example, I really cracks me up every time I see this, because this was put in by our colleagues in Europe, and I don't think they're aware that this is actually a sports thing and not an academic group, but nevertheless, it's in there. We're going to also be adding a few more North America relevant groups to this, but for right now we have R1. So you can use preset groups as well as creating your own groups. And the only caveat with groups too is that it has to be like things. So whereas favorites, you can combine, a date range and a search term and a research filter and say that it's a favorite. Groups have to be the same. They have to be like things. So you can create a group of organizations, a group of years, a group of people, but you can't combine those in a group, if that makes sense.
So Heidi, can I just clarify? So my understanding now is that two things really need to happen in order for Melinda's wish to come true, right?
Yes.
One is that those who are sharing among themselves would have access to analytics. And I think we can solve that right now by saying that we're happy, and Dimensions is supporting us in doing this, providing analytics access to all research development officers who are interested in putting together information for a T32 or for a grant or what have you. Since you specialize in this, you obviously have a need to be able to get a higher degree of analytics. So I'm very comfortable doing that. But the second thing that you suggested is that we have to wait until the sharing feature that Melinda describes is actually available, and that's on a 6-week horizon?
I believe so, yes. The other thing you can do though is that once you've created a group, and this is kind of a shortcut until it's officially developed. So I'm just going to apply this one. You can send that URL to someone else, provided they have access to analytics, obviously, and they will see the same. They should see the same exact thing. What you're gonna see coming here is like my shared groups, basically, and then there's still. I'm 90% sure it's on the 6-week roadmap. The other thing that is also coming while we're talking about developments that we've been asking for, this is another one that I made a frenemies with the product team and asking for, is the ability to select just certain records from your result set to export. Right now, when you do a search, when you export, it's everything. You can't be selective. So what will be coming shortly is the ability to select records for an export. Also on the roadmap is the ability to, right now you can only export in CSV or Excel. We're gonna add the ability to export in formats that are compatible with reference managers. So RAS and BibTeX, tech, whatever, however you say it, I always say it wrong. So that's also on our roadmap. And again, that is based purely on user feedback and some pushing from me. Well, these were great questions so far. I'm very happy. And again, if you need support at any time with something, please feel free to contact our support team. There's a support center here. You can find FAQs. You can submit a ticket, suggest a feature, etc. Send feedback. For example, perfect example, if you think there's a funder that should be in Dimensions that is not in Dimensions, you can send feedback. We'll reach out to them. The caveats around this, though, are like, we're not going to include every funder. MacArthur is a perfect example and the one I always use. If they don't primarily fund research, they're not going to be indexed in Dimensions, simply because there aren't any outputs we can tie to that research. I used to work for MacArthur, a Genius Grant Award winner, and found out you can do absolutely anything with that money, and he bought a house. So certain types of funders we're not going to index, but we will reach out if there's one you don't see.
Heidi, there's a request to show how to get to VOS Viewer again.
Yes. Okay, so to download the free software, you just go to vosviewer.com. And then it will, you can, obviously there's a lot of resources here to download it. If you're on a Mac, do not use Chrome, use Safari. It will not work on Chrome in a Mac for some reason. Once you've downloaded it, then again, so I'll show you. We'll just pick a person. Oh no, that's 8. Yeah, no, that's fine. So I would export for bibliometric mapping. So you'll see links here too to VOS Viewer and Insightspace. This might take a minute. So yeah. This is why I didn't do this live. It does take a minute. And you'll get an email saying the export's ready as well. So you're not just waiting around. Yeah, that's why I tend to not do this live. Okay. Yeah, no, VOS Viewer is great. I mean, it really is. It's a fantastic tool. If you really get into it, there are co-citation analysis. You can do those co-authorship. There's regional networks. And it keeps getting better. They update it fairly recently. In fact, 15 days ago. And it's compatible with other sources too, but of course we're only going to talk about dimensions here. Yeah, this is going to take a second. So yeah, I'm happy to do. We do have resources on our website. We have a lot of resources on our website, and I'm wondering if we have Boss Viewer here. We may not, but I am happy to. Oh no, actually, yeah, no, we don't have it on the website, but I'm happy to forward you some Voss Viewer examples that we have.
Yeah, because there's a couple of steps that you need to take when you create those Voss views. But I know we do. I know we have provided step by step before, Heidi, so we can definitely do it for this group too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's not I mean, it's a technical thing. So when you download the file, it downloads as a zip file. So then you need to get it's not ideal. Then you need to get the Excel or the CSV file out, name it so you can find it. And then put it in a location on your computer, like I suggested, desktop, again, because of that just default way that Voss Viewer looks at your computer for files. So that's the trickiest part. Then, I mean, I would encourage you to, once you've downloaded the software, definitely look at the manual, because it will give you exhaustive detail about everything you can do with Voss Viewer. And again, it's a fantastic tool, but also we will be including those visualizations and dimensions at some point by the end of the year. So I imagine they'll appear somewhere in Analytical Views. So that'll make it even easier. Okay, if there are no questions, I did want to show you one use case that I think is pretty compelling too. And this is, again, for marketing and promotion, which everyone is in one way or another doing, whether they want to or not. Let's say a new article, you've just published a new article. You can use the abstract search. Oh, I didn't click abstract search. It's going to punish me. So let's say that's my article abstract, and I'm trying to figure out who's covering similar research. So I'm again looking for very similar publications. In fact, let's put a time limit on this as well, that are recent. Altmetric attention tends to accrue very quickly after publication, and we update that information daily. So as soon as this sorts. So now I can sort by altmetric attention score. So now I'm looking at very similar research, but I'm looking at it from the point of view of coverage. So this doesn't even have, or I have a feeling it does have citations, so I'm not showing up. If I go into this record, again, I can click on this altmetric badge and I can see which news outlets have covered very similar research. And I can find out, because I can click through these stories unless they're behind a paywall. I can find out who the reporters were. Be nice if this one actually listed one. But I can, again, let's say this, normally there's a byline. Beats change constantly. So finding outlets and journalists that have already covered similar research, again, will inform your marketing and outreach efforts to amplify the work that you're doing. It's again, fantastic use case for the abstract search. Okay, good. Thank you, David. Yeah, no, it's really useful, because not only that, if you're doing social media promotion, you can look at the tweets, you can see who's tweeting, you can see, I don't think this one, oh yeah, so it does have Twitter. So I can see how many followers this person has. So this is someone I might want to, reach out to directly about this research. It'll show you the upper bound, of the attention from Twitter. But this is, again, really useful because you can identify some thought leaders that are talking on social media about this kind of research. So that's another huge helpful feature for Dimensions. The other thing we covered before was view PDF. So wherever you see this button, you can instantly access the PDF in Dimensions, and you can download it, you can annotate it without having to go out to the publisher site. And then if you have a ReadCube library, you can add records to your ReadCube library as well. And for those of you who weren't on the previous call, I think most of you were, you can again connect your ORCID profile to Dimensions and add publications automatically with one click to your profile. I would encourage you to check out the website. If any of you are API savvy, we have a number of API resources, including introductional videos, some code samples, code examples, GitHub, Google Sheets just approved an extension for our API. So if you are an API user, you can now add that extension to Google Chrome, and it allows you to query the API like almost instantly. I think we even have a blog post about it. Perhaps not. It's coming. I know it's coming. We've definitely talked about it on social media, but you can explore the API documentation. Again, there's a lot of resources on the website, including training, short training videos. So for people, colleagues that you might want to loop in on this that haven't been able to attend, we have a number of resources. So how to search, how to find researchers, more information about metrics. You can add Dimensions badges to, if you have publications on your website, you can add a Dimensions badge that will give citation information for that. And again, there are quick start guides to both Analytics Plus and a PDF version. So there's a number of resources for folks who aren't able to be on this call today. Okay, we have 10 minutes left-ish, 9 minutes left. Is there anything else I can help you with? I encourage you to play around with Dimensions. It's, sometimes I've hit dead ends with certain searches, and it's just a matter of refining what you're looking for in most cases. And we're happy to help you do that. I have, Liz can share my Calendly link. You can just book a half hour with me if you want to, and just walk through something that you're having trouble with. Or again, you can submit a support ticket. They're fantastic. They do not. We do let them sleep on the weekends. So I think that was everything.
Thank you so much, Heidi. This is Diana. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be putting these on the UCI Brain website. So for people who may have missed an earlier session or want to review something, we'll have these available at brain.uci.edu/dimensions.
Great. I love your landing page. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you on board, and we really want to help you make the most out of this tool. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Oh, and one other thing is we did talk about potentially in the fall having an in-person training. So I hope everyone has a chance to go through and, experiment with dimensions, and then, be able to meet at least Liz or maybe Heidi in person to ask your questions.
I would love to come out to California.
Yeah.
When it's possible. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate your time and attention and patience with my internet speed and my slight bit of illness. And again, feel free to reach out. I really appreciate it. And I thank you for organizing this.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay. Have a great day. Oh, wait, chat. Okay. Thank you. All right. Have a great day.